Claire Monroe is 39 years old. She's a 7th grade English teacher. She's recently divorced, and she just moved into a duplex where the woman on the other side of the wall is 26, tattooed, and entirely too competent. Dani Rivera has a rule. One word. Don't. Don't fall for the newly out woman with the sad eyes and the banana bread. Don't fix her Wi-Fi. Don't help her carry boxes. Don't notice the way she stops breathing when you touch her back. But rules are made by people who haven't met Claire Monroe. This is Good Girl Next Door by Aurora North, Sapphic, Age Gap, Praise Kink. The kind of slow burn that doesn't just ignite, it rewires everything. The duplex looked exactly like it had in the listing photos, which meant it looked like a place where someone went to start over and probably cried a lot. Claire Monroe sat in her Honda Civic with the engine off, both hands still on the steering wheel, staring through the windshield at the pale blue siding and the sagging front porch. And the mailbox with 2 slots, one for each unit. Her unit was the one on the right, Unit B, the one with the slightly crooked shutters and what appeared to be a dead fern hanging from a hook by the door. This is your life now, she thought. Unit B, dead fern, population 1. She'd been sitting here for 7 minutes. She knew because the clock on the dashboard said 9:07, and she'd pulled in at exactly 9, which was the time she'd told herself she would start unloading, which was the time she was now not unloading because her legs had apparently decided they no longer worked. The U-Haul trailer was hitched to the back of the Civic. It contained 17 boxes, a mattress, a floor lamp, 2 kitchen chairs, approximately 40% of the books she'd accumulated over 15 years of marriage. Todd got the couch, the bed frame, the dining table, and the house. She got the Penguin Classics and a fresh start she hadn't asked for. Well, she had asked for it. That was the problem. She'd asked for it, and Todd had cried, and her mother had said, "Are you sure, sweetheart?" in that voice that meant, "Please don't do this." Her sister Sarah had been quiet in a way that was louder than yelling, and Claire had done it anyway, because she couldn't spend one more year lying next to a perfectly good man and wondering why his hands on her body felt like nothing. Not bad, not unwelcome, just nothing. Like being touched through several layers of plastic wrap. She let go of the steering wheel. Her palms were sweaty. 39 years old, sweaty palms in a parking spot, about to carry boxes into a building she'd rented sight unseen because the photos showed hardwood floors. And a clawfoot tub. And it was 14 minutes from the school where she taught 7th grade English, and far enough from Todd's house that she wouldn't accidentally drive past it on her way to buy milk. "Okay," she said out loud, to no one. "Okay, you're doing this." She got out of the car. The June air hit her like a wall, humid, thick, smelling like cut grass and hot asphalt. She was already sweating through her t-shirt, a faded thing from a Fleetwood Mac concert she'd gone to in college when she was 21, and thought she knew who she was. She pulled her hair up into a messy bun, securing it with the elastic she kept on her wrist for emergencies, and walked around to the trailer. The first box was books, obviously. She'd labeled it Books, Heavy, in black Sharpie, which was accurate in both the physical and emotional sense, and she hoisted it against her chest, and walked up the porch steps and through the front door of Unit B, which she'd propped open with a doorstop she'd bought specifically for this purpose, because Claire Monroe was, if nothing else, a planner. The apartment was empty. Clean, at least. The landlord had sent someone to mop the hardwood and wipe down the kitchen, but empty in a way that made her chest tight. No curtains, no rugs, no signs that anyone had ever lived here or would want to. The afternoon light came through the bare windows and hit the floor in long rectangles, and Claire stood in the middle of her new living room, holding 40 pounds of Penguin Classics, and thought, I have made a terrible mistake. She set the box down, went back for another. The second box was kitchen stuff. Mismatched mugs, a cast iron skillet that had been her grandmother's, a coffee maker she'd bought at Target 3 days ago because Todd kept the Breville. She carried it up the stairs to the second floor, where the kitchen was, along with a small dining area. And a bathroom with the clawfoot tub that had sold her on this place. The tub was nice. The tub was the one thing she felt good about. The third box was more books. The fourth box was more books. The fifth box was labeled clothes, but was mostly pajamas and cardigans, because Claire's wardrobe was approximately 60% professional teacher wear and 40% things she slept in, with exactly 0% of anything that could be described as sexy or fun or chosen for any reason other than comfort and practicality. By the sixth box, she was dripping sweat. By the eighth, her lower back was screaming. By the 10th, she was crying. Not dramatically, not the kind of crying you'd notice if you weren't looking. Just a steady leak from both eyes. The kind that happened when Claire was overwhelmed. And couldn't stop it, like a faucet with a bad washer. She'd cried like this during the divorce mediation. Quietly, apologetically, dabbing at her face with a tissue and saying, "Sorry, I'm fine, please continue." And the mediator had looked at her with pity that made Claire want to crawl under the table. She was carrying the 11th box, more books, because she was a 7th grade English teacher and her entire personality was books. Up the porch steps when her foot caught on the top stair, and the box lurched forward and she lurched with it. And for one spectacular moment, she was horizontal in the air, holding 30 pounds of novels, watching the porch floor come at her face. The box hit first. It split along the bottom seam, and books exploded across the porch like literary shrapnel. Pride and Prejudice skidding toward the railing, Beloved landing spine up in a potted something, a collection of Mary Oliver poems pinwheeling open to a random page. Claire landed on her knees, hard, the kind of hard that meant bruises tomorrow. She stayed there for a second, on all fours on the porch of her new home, surrounded by scattered paperbacks, crying and sweating and wondering if this was what a breakdown looked like from the inside. "Shit, you okay?" The voice came from the left, the other side of the duplex, Unit A, and Claire looked up from her position on the ground and saw a woman standing in the doorway. No, not standing, leaning. She was leaning against the doorframe with one shoulder, arms crossed, head tilted, like she'd been there for a while. Like watching your new neighbor eat shit on the porch was a spectator sport, and she'd been enjoying the show. She was young, mid-20s maybe. Short, dark hair, longer on top, falling across her forehead. A tank top that showed off arms covered in tattoos. Something botanical. All leaves and stems winding from wrist to shoulder. Ripped jeans, boots, a ring in her septum that caught the light when she moved. She was, objectively, and without any room for debate, the most attractive person Claire had ever seen in real life. "I'm fine," Claire said, from the ground, surrounded by books, tears on her face. "I'm totally fine." "You look like you're having the best day of your life," the woman said. Her mouth curved up on one side. Not a smirk, not quite. Something warmer than that. Something that said, "I'm laughing with you, not at you, even though you're on the floor." It's in the top 5, Claire managed. The woman pushed off the doorframe and crossed the porch in 3 easy steps. She crouched down and started picking up books, and Claire noticed her hands. Strong, square-nailed, a smudge of ink or charcoal on her thumb. She stacked Pride and Prejudice on top of Beloved and looked at the spines. "Good taste," she said. "Thanks. They tried to kill me, but I still love them." The woman laughed. It was a good laugh, low, surprised, like Claire had caught her off guard. She stood up, books in one arm, and offered her other hand to Claire, who took it and got pulled to her feet with embarrassing ease, like the woman was used to hauling things heavier than a 39-year-old English teacher. "Dani," the woman said. "Rivera. I'm next door." She nodded toward Unit A. "Claire, Monroe, She gestured vaguely at the disaster around her, apparently incapable of carrying a box up 3 stairs. "That box was dead before you hit the stairs. Look at that seam. It was taped with, 1 strip? You need the H pattern. 2 across the bottom, 1 down the middle." Claire blinked. "There's a pattern?" "There's always a pattern." Dani was already heading down the porch steps toward the trailer. "How many more?" "Oh, you don't have to." "How many?" Claire wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, hoping Dani hadn't noticed the crying. She had definitely noticed the crying. 6, maybe 7. Dani grabbed a box from the trailer like it weighed nothing and started carrying it up the steps. Claire stood on the porch for a second, watching her neighbor's shoulder blades shift under the thin fabric of her tank top, watching the tattoo move with the muscles of her arm. Then shook herself and went to grab another box, because she was not going to stand there and stare at the 20-something-year-old woman who'd just scraped her off the porch. They hauled the rest of the boxes in 15 minutes. Dani was efficient in a way that made Claire feel like a golden retriever. All enthusiasm, no strategy. While Claire struggled with the box labeled "fragile" wine glasses, she owned 4. Todd got the other 8. Dani carried 2 boxes at once up the stairs, stacked them neatly against the wall, and came back for more without breaking stride. By the time the trailer was empty, Claire was winded, and Dani was barely breathing hard, which seemed deeply unfair. They stood in Claire's living room, boxes everywhere. No furniture except the mattress, which was leaning against the wall like a drunk friend. The afternoon light was going gold through the windows. "Thank you," Claire said. "Seriously, I was going to be doing this until midnight." "No problem." Dani was looking around the apartment with a casual curiosity that somehow didn't feel invasive. "You got furniture coming, or?" "I have 2 chairs and a lamp." "A lamp?" "And a mattress." Dani looked at the mattress leaning against the wall, then back at Claire. "Big spender." "My ex-husband got the furniture. I got the books and the existential crisis." She said it without thinking, the way she'd been saying it for weeks, like a joke she'd rehearsed until it stopped hurting. But Dani didn't laugh. She just nodded, a small nod, like she was filing that information away somewhere. "Well," Dani said, "you've got good bones here. The floors are original hardwood. Hot water takes about 30 seconds to kick in. The left burner on the stove runs hot, so keep your eye on it." She pulled a pen from her back pocket. There was a pen in her back pocket, because of course there was, and looked around for paper. Didn't find any. Grabbed Claire's hand instead and wrote something on her palm. Claire's entire arm prickled. Dani's grip was light, her pen was a fine-tip micron, and the numbers she was writing on Claire's skin were the Wi-Fi password. "Capital H, lowercase everything else," Dani said, still holding Claire's hand, still writing. "The router shared between both units. If it goes out, unplug it for 10 seconds, plug it back in. Recycling goes out Tuesday, regular trash Wednesday. Green bin, not blue. Green bin, Claire repeated. She was staring at her own hand in Dani's. Dani's thumb was resting against her wrist. Claire could feel her own pulse beating against it and was suddenly, irrationally certain that Dani could feel it too. Dani let go, capped her pen, smiled, the full version this time, not the half curve from the porch. She had dimples. Of course she had dimples. If you need anything, I'm right through there. She pointed at the shared wall. Knock any time. I'm a night owl. Thank you. Really. I owe you like 100 cookies. I'll hold you to that. Dani headed for the door, paused, looked back. Claire? Yeah? The fern by your door is dead, by the way. That was the last tenant's. I can bring you something that's harder to kill if you want. I'd like that. Another smile, a small wave. Then she was gone, the screen door swinging shut behind her, and Claire was standing alone in her apartment full of boxes, with a Wi-Fi password inked on her palm, and the sudden, overwhelming feeling that she'd just been hit by something she didn't have a name for. She stood there for a long time. Then she walked to the kitchen, opened the one box she could find that had food in it, and sat on the floor with her back against the cabinet and ate crackers for dinner. Ritz crackers straight from the sleeve, because she was a grown woman who'd just ended a 15-year marriage and moved into a duplex and been rescued by a tattooed stranger who'd written on her hand like it was nothing. She looked at the password on her palm. Dani's handwriting was small and precise. The ink was already smudging from sweat. Claire closed her hand into a fist, like she could keep it. Stop, she told herself. Stop it. You are not going to be that cliché, the freshly divorced woman who falls for the first person who's nice to her. You are going to unpack your boxes, make your bed, and become a functioning human adult who lives alone and handles her own garbage cans. She ate another cracker. She did not unpack her boxes. She did, eventually, wrestle the mattress off the wall and onto the floor of the bedroom. She didn't have sheets. They were in one of the 17 boxes, and she couldn't bring herself to search. So she lay down on the bare mattress in her sweat-stiff t-shirt and stared at the ceiling and listened to the sounds of her new life. A car passing outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of old floors settling. And then music. From the other side of the wall, something low and warm. A woman's voice, smoky, over a simple guitar. Claire couldn't make out the words, just the shape of the melody coming through the plaster and lath, muffled but present. Like someone was playing it just for her, through the wall, knowing she was listening. She wasn't. She couldn't be. It was just Dani living her life on the other side of a shared wall, doing whatever she did on a Saturday night that didn't involve eating Ritz crackers on a bare mattress. Claire rolled onto her side, pressed her hand against the wall. The plaster was cool under her fingers. The music hummed through it, vibrating faintly against her palm. Or maybe that was her imagination. Maybe that was just her heartbeat, displaced, looking for something to press against. She kept her hand there for a long time, long enough for the light to go from gold to gray to dark. Long enough for the music to change, one song, 2, 3. Long enough to fall asleep like that, hand against the wall, face turned toward the sound of someone else's life. Her last coherent thought, before sleep pulled her under, was this. She smelled like espresso and something warm, and I can still feel the pen on my skin. She told herself it didn't mean anything. She told herself that in the morning she'd unpack and buy sheets and learn the recycling schedule and stop thinking about her neighbor's hands. And her dimples. And the way she'd said, Knock any time. I'm a night owl, like it was an open door and not a lit fuse. She told herself a lot of things. She believed almost none of them. Dani Rivera had a rule about straight women. The rule was simple. Don't. Don't flirt with them. Don't fix things for them. Don't let them cry on your couch at 2 a.m. And then act surprised when they go back to their boyfriend in the morning. Don't fall for the soft ones with the big eyes who say things like, "I've never felt this way before," and mean it, right up until they don't. She'd learned this rule the hard way, twice. The first time had been messy, a college roommate situation that ended with Dani sleeping on Jess's floor for a month. The second time had been worse. Catherine. 34, lawyer, beautiful. Closeted so deep she could have set up a whole apartment in there. A year of whispered I love yous in the dark, and public introductions as my friend Dani, and the slow, corrosive understanding that she would never be enough to make someone brave. Catherine married a man named Greg 8 months after she ended things. Dani found out from Instagram. She'd thrown her phone across the room so hard it cracked the screen. Jess had held her while she cried, and the next morning she'd written the rule on a Post-it note and stuck it to her bathroom mirror. Don't. One word. Very effective. She'd followed it faithfully for 2 years. And then Claire Monroe had fallen off her porch holding a box of Penguin classics, and Dani had looked at her, sweating, crying, apologizing for existing, beautiful in a way that was so entirely unconscious it made Dani's chest hurt, and thought, fuck. You're doing it again. Jess's voice cut through the Monday morning rush at Groundwork Coffee like a knife through foam. Dani looked up from the espresso machine, where she'd been pulling a shot of absolutely nothing because she'd forgotten to put a cup under the portafilter. Doing what? Staring into the middle distance with your mouth slightly open. You look like a golden retriever who just heard the word walk. Jess slid a cup under the drip and bumped Dani sideways with their hip. What's her name? Whose name? The woman you've been thinking about since Saturday. You've mispoured 3 drinks, you put whole milk in an oat milk latte, and you just pulled a shot into thin air. So either you're having a stroke or you met someone. Dani wiped the espresso off the drip tray with more force than necessary. New neighbor moved in this weekend. I helped her carry boxes. That's it. Uh-huh. What does she look like? I don't know. Normal. She's a teacher. A teacher. Yeah, 7th grade. English. What else? Dani concentrated very hard on tamping the next shot. She's older, late 30s, recently divorced, came with like 900 books and no furniture. She ate crackers for dinner on the floor. Jess was staring at her with the expression they reserved for moments when Dani was being spectacularly full of shit. They had a face like a Renaissance painting, and the bullshit detector of a bomb-sniffing dog. Their dark hair was buzzed close, their ears were lined with silver hoops, and they were wearing a t-shirt that said, "Ask me about my pronouns," in tiny font that forced people to lean in, which Jess found hilarious. How do you know she ate crackers on the floor? I heard through the wall. You heard crackers. I heard it was quiet over there, okay? No TV, no music, no unpacking sounds, just quiet. And then a crinkly wrapper. Crackers. Jess leaned against the counter and crossed their arms. Danielle, don't. You're tracking her eating habits through a shared wall. After one interaction. On a Saturday. I helped her carry boxes. She almost broke her neck on the stairs. It was a neighborly thing. And now you're in love with her. I'm not in love with her. I don't even know her. You know she's a 7th grade English teacher who eats crackers on the floor and owns 900 books and is recently divorced from, I'm guessing, a man? Dani said nothing. So she's straight, Jess said. She said ex-husband. That doesn't mean... Dani! I know. The rule. I know. Jess's face softened. They reached over and squeezed Dani's shoulder. Quick, firm, the way they did when they were being serious under the teasing. I'm not trying to be a dick. I just watched Catherine take a year of your life and give you nothing back. And you said, you promised. I'm not doing anything. She's my neighbor. I helped her move. End of story. Jess held their gaze for a moment, then nodded and turned back to the bar. Fine. End of story. It was not the end of the story. Claire texted her on Tuesday. Dani had given her number along with the Wi-Fi password, scrawled it on a sticky note, and slipped it under Claire's door Sunday morning with a note that said, in case of emergency. Emergencies include Wi-Fi down, spiders, existential dread. It was a joke. Mostly. The text came at 4:47 p.m., which Dani later learned was exactly when Claire got home from school. Hi, it's Claire from next door. Is the recycling bin the green one or the blue one? I've been staring at them for 10 minutes and I'm losing my mind. Dani was on the couch in her underwear and an old Phoebe Bridgers shirt, sketching a tattoo design. A snake winding through marigolds, something she'd been playing with for weeks. She picked up her phone and grinned. Dani, green for recycling, blue for trash. If you put glass in the blue one, black guy will leave a passive-aggressive note. Trust me. You've gotten a note? Dani, 2 notes. The second one was laminated. I think he made it at home. That's genuinely terrifying. Dani, he takes his work seriously. Want me to come out and show you? Claire, you don't have to do that. I've already bothered you enough for one lifetime. Dani, you've bothered me exactly 0 times. Come outside. She pulled on jeans, didn't bother with shoes, and walked out the front door. Claire was standing at the end of the driveway, between the 2 bins, holding a bag of recycling in one hand and her phone in the other, wearing a look of concentration that was wildly disproportionate to the task. She was in her work clothes, a knee-length skirt, a soft blue cardigan over a white blouse, flats that had seen better days. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders in loose waves, and she'd pushed her reading glasses up on top of her head like a headband. She looked like a librarian in a movie, the hot kind that takes off the glasses and lets down the hair, and the whole room goes quiet. Except she already had the glasses off, and the hair down, and she was still holding a garbage bag like it was a live grenade, and the room going quiet was just Dani's brain shorting out for a second. Don't. She reminded herself. The rule. Okay, Dani said, patting down the driveway in bare feet. Recycling 101. Green is recycling. Paper, cardboard, cans, glass. Blue is regular trash. They both go to the curb Tuesday night for Wednesday pickup. You want them about here. She dragged the green bin to the edge of the driveway. Not on the sidewalk, not in the street. Gary, that's the garbage guy. Gary has opinions about placement. Gary has a name? Gary and I have a complex relationship. I put the bins in the wrong spot. He leaves notes. I leave him cookies at Christmas. He pretends I don't exist. It's a whole thing. Claire laughed. It was a real laugh, not the polite, tight thing she'd been doing on Saturday, but an actual laugh that made her eyes crinkle and her nose scrunch and her whole face rearrange into something so warm that Dani felt it in her sternum. Don't. They dealt with the recycling. Dani showed her which items needed rinsing, how to break down cardboard boxes, where the bin lids latched so raccoons couldn't get in. It was boring. Municipal information. It should not have been the basis for any kind of emotional event. And yet. Thank you, Claire said for the 4th time. I'm sorry I keep asking you for help. I swear I'm a competent adult. I teach children. They trust me with their education. I believe you. I've never had to do any of this. Todd always handled the garbage, the yard, everything. All the house stuff. I did the inside and he did the outside. And now there's no outside person and I don't know which bin is which and She stopped, pressed her lips together. Sorry, that's a lot of information about my garbage situation. I like your garbage situation, Dani said. It's riveting. Tell me more about the bin confusion. Spare no detail. Claire's mouth twitched. She was fighting a smile. Dani wanted to see that smile so badly it was almost a physical itch. You're making fun of me. I'm not. I'm deeply invested in your relationship with Gary and the bins. I want updates. The smile broke through. Small, reluctant, devastating. You're ridiculous. I've been told. They stood in the driveway for a moment, the evening light going amber, the air smelling like someone's barbecue a few houses down. Claire shifted the empty recycling bag from one hand to the other. She was fidgeting. Dani recognized the body language, the same restless energy her anxious regulars had at the coffee shop, the ones who needed 3 tries to order because they were afraid of getting it wrong. I made banana bread, Claire said abruptly. Today, before I came outside. It's nothing, it's just banana bread. But I made extra, and I thought maybe you'd want some, as a thank you, for Saturday, and for the garbage lesson. She said garbage lesson like it was a real academic subject, and she was conferring a degree. I would love banana bread. Yeah? I'd kill for banana bread. I've been eating cereal for dinner for 3 days. Claire's eyes went wide with genuine concern. That's not dinner. It's dinner if you eat enough of it. No. Come inside. I'll cut you a piece. Or I can bring it over to yours if you... Your place is fine. She followed Claire up the porch steps and through the door of Unit B and into a space that looked markedly different from Saturday. The boxes were mostly unpacked. The bookshelf, the one Dani had seen leaning against the wall, was upright and stuffed with books, spines color-coded in a way that was either meticulous or obsessive, or both. A rug covered the living room floor. The 2 kitchen chairs sat at a small table that hadn't been there before. The mattress was no longer on the floor. Claire had bought a simple bed frame, visible through the open bedroom door. It still looked sparse. It still looked like a life in progress. But it looked like someone was trying, and Dani found that unbearably endearing. Sorry about it's still pretty bare, Claire said, gesturing vaguely. I keep meaning to get a couch, but every time I look at prices, I have a small cardiac event. Facebook Marketplace. I got mine for $60. Some college kid was moving and needed it gone. Is that safe? Buying a stranger's couch? As safe as anything. Check for bed bugs, bring a friend, don't get in their van. Words to live by. Dani sat at the kitchen table while Claire cut banana bread on a wooden cutting board. The bread was perfect, moist, dark, smelling like brown sugar and vanilla. Claire put a thick slice on a plate and set it in front of Dani, and their hands touched during the transfer. Not a lot, just Claire's fingertips against Dani's as the plate changed hands. Claire's fingers were soft, lotion soft, teacher soft, no calluses, nails trimmed short and clean. Dani noticed these things because she was a tattoo artist, and she noticed hands the way other people noticed faces. That was the excuse she was going with anyway. "This is incredible," Dani said around the first bite. It was. It was the best banana bread she'd ever had. And she'd had a lot of banana bread because she worked at a coffee shop and people were constantly bringing in baked goods. Like, offensively good. How is this so good? Claire flushed. The pink spread from her cheeks to her ears and down her neck, disappearing under the collar of her cardigan. It's a basic recipe. Brown butter instead of regular. That's the only secret." "It's a hell of a secret." Dani took another bite and made a sound that was, in retrospect, probably more appropriate for a different context. Claire looked away quickly. They talked. Dani ate 2 pieces of banana bread and drank tea that Claire made without asking. She just put the kettle on, like feeding people was her default setting. They sat at the small table, and Claire asked about Dani's job. Both jobs, the barista thing and the tattoo thing. And Dani talked more than she usually did, because Claire listened in a way that made talking easy. Not the nodding along listening that most people did. Real listening. The kind where Claire asked follow-up questions that proved she'd heard the details. "You said you're building a portfolio. What kind of pieces do you want to specialize in? And is the apprenticeship a formal program or more like a mentorship?" And Dani realized, somewhere between the second cup of tea and the description of her dream tattoo style, botanical, fine line, black and gray with tiny pops of color, that she was showing Claire her sketchbook. She never showed anyone her sketchbook. Not even Jess had seen the newer pages. But Claire had asked, "Can I see?" with such genuine curiosity that Dani had pulled up photos on her phone before her brain caught up with her hands. Claire scrolled through the designs slowly, zooming in, tilting the phone to see details. "These are beautiful," she said, and her voice was quiet and serious in a way that made it clear she wasn't just being polite. "This one, is that a peony?" "Yeah, it's for a chess piece I want to do, if I ever get the apprenticeship." "When," Claire said. "When you get the apprenticeship." Something in Dani's chest shifted, a small tectonic thing. She took her phone back and their fingers brushed again, and this time she let the contact last a half-second longer than necessary. "So," Dani said, leaning back in her chair, aiming for casual, "you mentioned your ex-husband on Saturday, Todd?" Claire's hand tightened around her mug. "Yeah, Todd. We were married for 15 years. We divorced about 3 months ago." She paused. "He's a good person. That's the hard part. He didn't do anything wrong." "Then why—" Dani stopped herself. "Sorry, you don't have to." "No, it's okay." Claire took a breath. The kind of breath people take before they jump off something. "I left because I realized I was..." Another breath. "I'm gay. Or, I don't know, I'm something. I'm not straight, I know that much." She laughed, short and brittle. 39 years old and I know that much. Very inspiring." Dani kept her face neutral. She kept her body still. She kept every single muscle in her expression under control. Because what was happening inside her was a 5-alarm fire, and Claire did not need to see it. "She's not straight. She's not straight. She just told you she's not straight. The rule. Remember the rule. Fuck the rule. No. The rule exists for a reason. The rule exists because of Catherine. She's not Catherine. You don't know that yet. That's not nothing, Dani said carefully. Figuring that out at any age that's black. That's brave. It doesn't feel brave. It feels like I wasted 15 years of a really good man's life because I couldn't figure out something basic about myself. It's not basic, and you didn't waste anything. You lived a life, and then you lived the truth. That's not wasting time. That's being human. Claire looked at her. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Not quite. She was holding it, the way she held everything, tight and careful and close to the chest. People keep saying that it's brave. But brave would have been figuring it out at 19, not 39. Brave doesn't have an age cutoff, said the woman who probably knew since she was 15. 12, actually. Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. Dani grinned. In the catsuit, I had a religious experience. Claire laughed, wet, surprised, genuine. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her cardigan. Mine was, this is embarrassing. Tell me. A woman at a farmer's market. She was eating a peach. Just standing there, in the sun, eating a peach. And I looked at her. And I felt more in that 1 second than I'd felt in 15 years of marriage. She shook her head. A peach. I realized I was gay because of a peach. That's the most poetic coming out story I've ever heard. It's ridiculous. It's perfect. They looked at each other across the small table. The kitchen was warm, the light was going soft, and Claire's hair was curling at the ends from the humidity, and her eyes were still bright from almost crying, and she smelled like vanilla, and brown butter, and the faintest trace of chalk. And Dani thought very clearly, I am going to fall in love with this woman, and it is going to destroy me, and I am going to let it happen. She stood up before she could do something stupid. I should let you get to your evening. You've got grading? Lesson plans? Always. Claire stood too, walked her to the door. They paused in the doorway, the same doorway Dani had leaned in on Saturday, and Claire was close enough that Dani could see the pale freckles on her nose, and the faint scar on her chin, and the tiny, almost imperceptible way her breathing changed when Dani stepped into her space. Dani put her hand on Claire's lower back to guide her out of the way of the door. Light. Brief. The kind of touch that could be nothing. Neighborly, casual. A hand on a back. Claire inhaled, sharp and quick, through her nose, like she'd been stung. Her whole body went still under Dani's palm. Not stiff, not pulling away, just still, like she was concentrating on the feeling of Dani's hand through the thin cotton of her blouse. Dani dropped her hand, stepped back. Thanks for the banana bread, she said. Her voice was steady, her hand was not. She shoved it in her pocket. Seriously, best I've ever had. Anytime. I bake when I'm stressed, so there'll probably be a lot of baked goods. I'm not going to complain about that. Good night, Dani. Night, Claire. She walked back to her side of the duplex, went inside, closed the door, leaned against it. The apartment was quiet. Her couch, her plants, her sketchbooks, her life, all exactly where she'd left it. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. A woman who smelled like vanilla had told her she was gay over tea. And banana bread and Dani had touched her back and felt her breathing stop. And now the air in her own apartment tasted different. Like something in the atmosphere had rearranged itself at the molecular level. She walked to the kitchen. The banana bread was sitting on her counter. Claire had wrapped 2 extra slices in foil and pressed them into Dani's hands on the way out, and Dani had taken them because saying no to Claire Monroe was apparently not a thing she was capable of. She ate a slice standing at the counter. It was still perfect. She thought about Claire's hands cutting it, Claire's flush when Dani complimented it, Claire's soft voice saying, "I'm not straight, I know that much." Her phone buzzed. Jess. Jess, how's the neighbor situation? End of story still? Dani stared at the screen. Typed, deleted, typed again. Dani, she's gay. 3 dots. A long pause. Oh no. Dani. She told me tonight, over banana bread. Jess. Dani. Dani. I know. Jess. She's newly gay. She's a baby. She literally just came out of a marriage. Dani. I know. Jess. The rule exists for a reason. Dani. I know it does. So, what are you going to do? Dani looked at the wall. The shared wall. Claire was on the other side of it right now, grading papers or making tea or lying on her new bed staring at the ceiling the way Dani was about to be. 13 inches of plaster and lav between them, close enough to hear her move if the apartment was quiet enough, close enough to knock. Dani. Nothing. I'm going to be her neighbor and her friend, and I'm not going to do anything. Jess. You promise? Dani put her phone down without answering. She took a shower, cold because she deserved it, and changed into boxers and a tank top and lay on her bed in the dark with her wet hair soaking the pillow and listened to the quiet sounds from the other side of the wall. Footsteps, water running, the creak of a bed frame. Then nothing. She pressed her forehead against the wall. The plaster was cool. She imagined Claire on the other side, maybe in the same position, maybe not. Probably not. Claire was probably asleep, exhausted from a day of teaching and coming out to her neighbor, and being so goddamn beautiful she made Dani's teeth ache. Don't fall for the sad teacher with the pretty eyes and the banana bread. Don't fall for the woman who doesn't know what she wants yet. Don't be someone's training wheels. Don't. She fell asleep with her hand against the wall and dreamed about peaches. Claire was good at her job. She needed that said, for the record, before anything else. She was good at standing in front of 30 12-year-olds who would rather be literally anywhere else and making them care about the outsiders. She was good at lesson plans and parent emails, and the delicate diplomacy of lunchroom seating drama. She was good at staying late, coming early, buying classroom supplies with her own money, remembering which kids had peanut allergies and which ones needed a quiet word in the hallway after third period because something was happening at home. She was a good teacher, a competent, organized, effective educator who had been doing this for 16 years and had a drawer full of thank you cards from former students. And a Principal's Excellence Award from 2019, and the respect of her colleagues, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when she walked into room 207 every morning, she knew exactly what she was doing. She needed that on the record, because the rest of her life was a tire fire. It was Saturday, her second Saturday in the duplex. She'd survived 1 full week of school since the move, which felt like an achievement worthy of a medal, or at least a glass of wine. And she'd rewarded herself by driving to IKEA on Friday evening and buying a desk. She needed a desk. She'd been grading papers on the floor, on the kitchen table, on the bathroom counter once when she'd gotten an email from a parent at 10 p.m. and happened to be brushing her teeth. A desk was a reasonable adult purchase. A desk said, "I live here. I work here. I am a person with a surface on which to place things." The desk was called Malm. It had come in a flat box that weighed approximately the same as a small horse, and she dragged it up the stairs by herself through sheer force of stubbornness and spite. And now it was 10 a.m. on Saturday, and she was sitting on her bedroom floor surrounded by 47 pieces of compressed particle board, 14 bags of screws in 4 different sizes, 2 Allen wrenches, neither of which seemed to be the right Allen wrench, and an instruction manual that appeared to have been drawn by someone who hated the concept of clarity. She'd been at it for an hour. She'd gotten the 2 side panels connected to the back panel, which had felt like a massive victory, until she realized she'd attached them upside down and had to take the whole thing apart and start over. Now she was trying to get a cam lock to catch, and it wasn't catching, and her fingers were cramping, and there was sweat dripping into her eyes, and she was not going to cry about a desk. She was absolutely going to cry about a desk. "Fuck," she whispered, which was a word she almost never used out loud, even alone, because she was a teacher, and teachers didn't say fuck, except in their heads approximately 400 times a day. Fuck this desk, fuck Sweden, fuck Allen wrenches, and whoever invented them, and whoever decided that furniture should come in 47 pieces instead of 1 piece, which is the number of pieces furniture should come in. She tried the cow lock again. It slipped. Her knuckle scraped against the edge of the particle board, hard, splitting the skin. She hissed, stuck her knuckle in her mouth, and tasted blood and sawdust and failure. That's when she heard the knock. 3 taps on the shared wall, not the door. Tap, tap, tap. And then Dani's voice, muffled but clear. "I can hear you swearing through the wall. You okay in there?" Claire closed her eyes. She was sitting on the floor in shorts and a tank top she'd slept in. No bra, hair in a knot on top of her head, blood on her knuckle, surrounded by Swedish engineering. And her own incompetence. She was not okay. She was the opposite of okay. She was a 39-year-old woman who couldn't assemble a desk. "I'm fine," she called back. "Just having a conversation with some furniture." A pause. Then, "Front door or wall door?" "What?" "I'm coming over. Which is faster?" "Dani, you don't have to." But she was already hearing footsteps, and then a knock at the front door. And then she was walking to the door and opening it, and there was Dani in the hallway, in low-slung joggers, and a cropped t-shirt that showed a strip of brown stomach and the edge of a tattoo on her hip that Claire had not seen before and was now trying very hard not to stare at. Dani looked past her into the apartment, toward the bedroom, where the desk wreckage was visible through the open door. Her eyebrows went up. "Mom? You can tell from here?" "I can tell from the energy. MALM is a 2-person job minimum. You've been doing this alone?" "I've been doing everything alone. That's sort of the theme." It came out sharper than she meant it. Self-pitying. Claire winced. "Sorry, I didn't." "Stop apologizing. Scoot over. I've built about 30 of these things." Dani walked past her into the bedroom, and the smell of her came with her. Espresso, sandalwood, something warm underneath that Claire couldn't name but could feel in the back of her throat like a swallow of good whiskey. Dani crouched on the floor and surveyed the damage with the calm authority of a surgeon assessing a patient. She picked up the instruction manual, glanced at it, tossed it aside. Picked up the Allen wrench Claire had been using, shook her head, dug through the hardware bags, and found a different one. "Wrong wrench," she said. "This is the 4mm. You need the 5. They look the same, but they're not." They look exactly the same. They do. IKEA does that on purpose because they want you to suffer. Dani was already unscrewing the cam locks Claire had put in wrong, her hands moving fast. And sure, she had a smudge of something on her forearm. Ink, maybe, or charcoal? Her fingers were long and deft. The muscles in her forearms flexed as she twisted the wrench. Claire was staring at her forearms. She realized she was staring at her forearms. She looked at the ceiling instead. "Okay." Dani sat back on her heels and looked at Claire. "We're going to do this together. I'll walk you through it, you do the work. Deal?" "I can just, if you want to do it, I can get out of the way." "Nope. You're learning. You live alone now, which means you're going to need to build things. So we're going to build this together, and next time, you'll know how." She patted the floor beside her. "Come here." Claire sat. Their knees were almost touching. Dani's skin was warm. Claire could feel the heat radiating off her in the cool bedroom air. She was suddenly, acutely aware that she wasn't wearing a bra. And her tank top was thin, and it was not warm enough in this room for the reason her nipples were hard. "First things first," Dani said, sorting hardware into neat piles. "Cam locks go threaded side into the panel. Then you rotate the lock to catch. You had the right idea, just the wrong wrench and the wrong angle. Here." She handed Claire a cam lock. "Push it into that hole, the one on the left." Claire pushed it in. "Good. Now take the wrench, the 5mm, the thicker one, and turn it clockwise. Slow. You'll feel it catch." Claire turned it. Slowly. Felt the lock engage with a satisfying click. "There you go." Dani checked it, nodded. "Now do the second one. Same thing. Slow." Claire did the second one. It clicked. "Perfect. Now we're going to attach the side panel. Hold it flush against the back. Yeah, like that. Press your hip against it to keep it steady." Claire pressed her hip against the panel. Dani leaned across her to check the alignment, and her shoulder pressed against Claire's chest. Brief, incidental, electric. Claire stopped breathing for one full second. "Little to the left," Dani murmured, and Claire shifted, and Dani's hand came up and covered hers on the panel, guiding it into position. "Right there. Hold it. Don't let go." "I won't." "Good." Dani drilled the screws in. The panel held. Claire held. They worked like that for 20 minutes, Dani giving instructions in a low, steady voice, Claire following them with a focus she usually reserved for teaching. Hold this, turn that, line these up, push here. Dani's hands occasionally covered hers to adjust an angle or steady a grip. Every time it happened, Claire's pulse did something arrhythmic and dangerous. She liked this. She liked being told what to do. She liked it so much it was making her dizzy. Not in the classroom. In the classroom. She was the authority, the one giving instructions, and she was good at that. But here, on the floor, with Dani's calm voice guiding her through each step, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. A settling, a release of the constant buzzing anxiety that lived in her chest like a second heartbeat. Someone else was in charge, someone competent and sure. All Claire had to do was follow directions, and when she got it right, "There," Dani said. "Now the drawer slides. These are the tricky part. See these little clips? They need to click into the rail on both sides. Take the right one, I'll do the left." Claire took the right slide, lined it up the way Dani showed her. It didn't click. She tried again. Didn't click. I can't. It's not. Hey, Dani's voice, gentle. Breathe. You're gripping too hard. Relax your hand. Let it slide in. Don't force it. Claire relaxed her hand. Let the clip slide into the rail. It clicked. There. Dani looked at her and her face was, God, her face. Close and warm, and those dark eyes crinkled with something that was more than approval, something that was specific and intent, and aimed at Claire like a beam of light. See? She smiled. Good girl. Two words. Thrown off casually, the way you'd say, nice job, or well done. Barely a pause before Dani was reaching for the next drawer slide. Claire's brain went white. Not metaphorically, not, oh, that was nice. Her vision actually blurred for a second. Heat detonated in her chest and rolled outward, up her neck, across her face, down her spine, straight down, pooling between her legs with a suddenness that made her gasp. Her fingers clenched on the drawer slide hard enough that the metal edges pressed into her palm. Her thighs pressed together under her, an involuntary clench, like her body was trying to hold on to something that was already moving through her. Her face was on fire. She was red. She knew she was red. She could feel the heat in her cheeks, in her ears, in the skin of her chest above the neckline of her tank top. She was flush the way she got after 2 glasses of wine. Except she hadn't had any wine. She was stone sober on a Saturday morning, and her neighbor had called her good girl, and her body had responded like Dani had put a hand between her legs. She couldn't speak. She was staring at the half-assembled desk with laser focus, not seeing it, seeing nothing except the after-image of those 2 words bouncing around inside her skull. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Dani was still working. She'd moved on to the other drawer slide, her hands busy, her posture casual. But Claire saw her pause, a fraction of a second, a stillness in her fingers, and she knew Dani had noticed. The flush, the gasp, the way Claire's entire body had gone taut like a string being plucked. Dani didn't comment. She didn't look over. She didn't tease. She just kept working, her jaw a little tighter than it had been 30 seconds ago. And that restraint, that deliberate choice to notice and not push, was somehow worse than if she'd said something, because it meant she knew. She knew exactly what she'd done, and she was choosing to let Claire have the space to feel it without having to explain it. Claire wanted to die. Claire wanted Dani to say it again. They finished the desk in near silence. Not uncomfortable silence, loaded silence. The kind where every accidental brush of skin felt amplified, where the sound of breathing was too loud, where the air in the room had changed temperature and density, and neither of them was going to acknowledge it. When the last drawer slid into place and Dani stood back and said, "Done, you built a desk," Claire managed a smile that she hoped looked normal and not like a woman having a crisis. "I built a desk," she echoed. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone who hadn't just discovered something terrifying about herself on a bedroom floor next to a woman with tattooed arms. That calls for a celebration. Beer? It's 11 a.m. It's Saturday and you built furniture. That's beer legal in every time zone. Claire found the 2 bottles of IPA she'd bought during her ambitious grocery run earlier that week, back when she'd thought she was the kind of person who drank IPAs alone on weeknights. She opened them and they sat on the floor with their backs against the new desk, legs stretched out. The bedroom felt smaller than it had before, or maybe that was just Claire, who could still feel the heat in her face and the ache between her thighs and the ghost of Dani's hand on hers. "Tell me about these." Claire pointed at Dani's left arm, the botanical sleeve. She needed to talk about something, anything. She needed words in the air between them so the silence would stop being so loud. Dani looked down at her arm and smiled. It was a different smile than the ones Claire had seen before. Softer, private. The kind of smile people wore when they looked at something they'd made. "This one I designed myself," she said, turning her arm to show the inner forearm. A fern, delicate and intricate, the fronds curling in a spiral that followed the line of her muscle. It was the first piece in the sleeve. I drew it when I was 19, right after I moved here. It's a resurrection fern. They dry out and look dead, but when it rains, they open back up. They come back. "That's beautiful," Claire said. And she meant the tattoo, but she also meant the story, and she also meant Dani's arm, and she also meant the way Dani's voice dropped when she talked about something she cared about. Quiet and raw and unguarded. "This one's a peony." Dani rotated her arm. "For my grandmother. She grew them in her yard. And this," up near the shoulder, partly hidden by the cropped sleeve. "Jasmine. It blooms at night. I liked that, the idea of something that only opens in the dark." Claire reached out and touched the fern. She didn't decide to do it. Her hand just moved, her fingertip landing on the innermost curl of the frond, tracing the line of ink on the soft skin of Dani's inner forearm. The skin there was thin and warm. She could feel the texture of the tattoo, slightly raised, the lines a fraction thicker than the surrounding skin. She traced the fern from the base of the spiral outward, following each frond, and neither of them said a word. The room was quiet except for breathing. Hers, shallow and unsteady, and Dani's, deliberately controlled. Under her fingertip, she felt Dani's pulse. Not in the wrist, higher up, in the forearm, where the veins ran close to the surface. It was fast. Faster than a resting heart rate should be. Dani was still. Completely, unnaturally still, like she was holding herself in place by force of will. Her eyes were on Claire's hand, watching Claire's fingertip trace her skin, and her expression was one Claire recognized from the classroom, from the particular faces kids made when they were trying very hard not to react to something. Careful, contained, barely holding. Claire pulled her hand back. "Sorry," she breathed. "Don't be." Dani's voice was lower than it had been, rougher at the edges. She cleared her throat. "You can touch them whenever you want." The sentence sat in the air between them like a live wire. You can touch them whenever you want. It meant the tattoos. It obviously meant the tattoos. Except Dani's eyes were dark, and her pulse had been racing, and her voice had gone to gravel, and Claire wasn't sure either of them was talking about tattoos anymore. "I should..." Claire put down her beer and stood up, too fast, head rushing. "I have grading, and laundry, and I should let you get back to your Saturday." Dani stood too. Slowly, like someone unfolding from a position they'd been holding too long. She stretched, arms overhead, back arching, and her cropped shirt rode up. And Claire saw the full tattoo on her hip, a crescent moon with small flowers around it, and a strip of stomach that was flat and brown and had a faint line of dark hair running down from her navel. Claire looked at the floor so hard she could have burned a hole in it. "Thanks for the desk help," she said. "And the beer. And everything." "Anytime, Claire." Her name in Dani's mouth. Low and warm, the R soft, the vowels rounded. It sounded different than when other people said it. It sounded like it meant something. Dani left. The door closed. Claire stood in her bedroom with her brand new desk and her empty beer bottle and her racing heart and thought about what had just happened. Good girl. She walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, stood under the water with her forehead pressed against the tile and her eyes closed, and replayed it, the voice, the words, the casual ease of it. Like Dani said things like that every day, like it was nothing, like she had no idea what it had done. Except she did. Claire had seen her pause. She'd seen the tightness in Dani's jaw. She knew. Good girl. Claire's hand slid down her stomach. She shouldn't. She should turn the water cold and get out and grade her papers and not think about her neighbor's voice or her hands or her arms or the way she'd said you can touch them whenever you want, like an invitation to something that had nothing to do with ink. Her fingers found the ache between her legs, and she inhaled sharply through her teeth. She was wet. Not from the shower. Wet in the way that felt thick and hot and specific. The way she almost never got. The way Todd had spent 15 years trying to make her. And never could. She was wet from 2 words spoken on a bedroom floor by a woman with a fern tattoo and a septum ring, and hands that knew how to build things. She touched herself. Slow at first, tentative, like she was doing something illicit, which was insane. She was a grown woman in her own shower. She was allowed to touch herself, but it felt transgressive anyway. Because she wasn't thinking about anything abstract or safe, she was thinking about Dani, specifically. Dani's voice saying, "Good girl." Dani's hands guiding hers. Dani's pulse under her fingertip, fast, fast, fast. She pressed 2 fingers against her clit and circled, and her hips jerked, and she braced her other hand against the tile and thought about Dani's mouth, the curve of it, the lower lip, the way it shaped words like good and girl and don't be sorry. And she came. Hard, sudden. The kind of orgasm that started in her core and radiated outward until her legs almost buckled, until she was gasping, mouth open, water running down her face, fingers still working because she couldn't stop. Not yet. It was still going, pulsing. Behind her closed eyes, she saw Dani's face, looking at her the way she'd looked at her over the desk, close and warm and intent. And she came again, a second wave cresting on the first, her whole body clenching, a moan escaping that she bit off too late. She stood in the shower for a long time after that. Water cooling, heart rate slowly descending from orbit. Her legs were shaking. She couldn't remember the last time she'd come that hard. College, maybe. Before Todd. Before the long, flat years of sex that felt like obligation dressed up as love. She turned off the water, wrapped herself in a towel, wiped the steam from the mirror and looked at herself. Flushed, wet-haired, wide-eyed. Looking like a woman who had just discovered something she couldn't undiscover. I came from thinking about my neighbor saying, "Good girl," to me while we built a desk. She pressed her hands over her face. I am in so much trouble. She tried to grade papers. She sat at her brand new desk in her brand new bedroom, in her brand new life, and opened her laptop and pulled up the stack of 7th grade essays on the outsiders, and read the same sentence 4 times without absorbing a single word. She thought about Googling it. Why do I like being called good girl? Is that weird? Am I broken? She opened a browser tab, closed it, opened it again, typed praise kink with her heart hammering like she was looking up something illegal. The results were illuminating. Not pornographic, not yet, although she could feel those links pulsing at the edge of the search results like a dare. She clicked on an article from a psychology blog, then a Reddit thread, then a personal essay by a woman who discovered in her 30s that praise during sex was the thing that unlocked her after years of feeling broken and unresponsive. Claire read that essay 3 times. By the end, she was crying. Not the leaking, overwhelmed crying of the move. Quiet, stunned tears that came from recognition. From the feeling of reading your own experience in a stranger's words. And realizing you're not the only one. You're not defective. You're not frigid, or boring, or bad at sex. You're just a person who needs a specific thing. And you never knew the thing had a name. She closed the laptop, lay on her bed, the bed she'd made that morning with sheets she'd finally unpacked, and stared at the ceiling. Her hair was still damp. The room smelled like her shampoo and faintly, impossibly, like sandalwood. Through the wall, she heard Dani's music start up. Low and warm, the same kind of sound as last Saturday. A woman's voice, a guitar. Claire turned her head and looked at the wall. She pressed her hand against it. On the other side of that wall was a woman who had called her good girl without thinking, who had noticed what it did and chosen not to push, who had steady hands and dark eyes, and a pulse that raced when Claire touched her skin. Claire lay there for a long time, hand on the wall, music coming through. She thought, I am 39 years old, and I just figured out what I want. She thought, and she's 12 feet away. She thought, and I have no idea what to do about it. She pressed her hand harder against the wall, as if she could push through it. As if Dani could feel her there, on the other side, reaching. She fell asleep like that again, hand on the wall, face turned toward the sound. The last thing she heard before sleep took her was the low hum of a bass line through the plaster, steady as a heartbeat, close as breath. Claire's hand is on the wall. The music is coming through from the other side, low and warm, steady as a heartbeat. Her hair is still wet. Her body is still shaking. 2 words. That's all it took. 2 words spoken over an IKEA desk by a woman with tattooed arms and a voice like warm honey, and Claire Monroe just discovered something about herself she can never undiscover. The full novel is available now, and there's an exclusive bonus chapter, Ink and Skin, too hot for Amazon. Find both at fractalenigma.com. Thanks for listening. See you next episode.